I won't lie, this has been a hard one to write because, well, I don't really have much to say about the final beta. I haven't really had much time to play it, and the second beta was pretty much nothing new. Well, they added one little feature which we'll get into in a second, but overall all of the new content was added in the final beta, which wasn't too much. We got some new missions, some expeditions, which sound fancy, but the final product of these expeditions were lacking to say the least. So you might be wondering, I said last time that I'd be a bit more nitpicky with this game, and I'm going to try my hardest, and I feel awful for saying this, it's not a bad game. In a matter of fact, it's rather fun. But a fun game doesn't make it a great game, so without any further ado, the new content that was added into this beta starts you back off at the Anderson camp. Again, yeah, it seems to me there's going to be several of these holdout missions in the game. However, this time instead of blasting a scrap cannon at some walkers, instead you'll be fighting off the family's lackeys, who attempt to steal some supplies from you all over the camp. Does that sound familiar? If not, do the word Safe House Raid ring any bells? Yeah, this is almost identical to your Safe House Raid from Payday, but instead of them swarming shield and dozers your way, you'll have several spots to look after, while dealing with raiders who walk on a direct path like a Scare Electrics while they try to gun you down. And remember how unfair I mentioned the survivors were last time on Hell or High Water? Well, playing this on hard is like asking you to smell the floor because, my god, I was down so many times doing this. Now, you could argue that I'm just bad at video games, and yeah, you're probably right, but I am pretty convinced these guys never reload. In fact, I've actually seen one firing at me while reloading his gun, so take that as you will. While we're on the topic of survivors, I do have one slight concern of how Overkill have programmed them. So you got the 4 types of survivors: basic, armoured, slightly armoured and snipers. So snipers are fine, all except how they can one-shot you even at maximum health on Aiden, while on normal. Armoured survivors got nerfed thankfully, and they're pretty much fine now. The slightly armoured ones take 2 headshots, which is fine because they have helmets on, but then there's the basics. You get 2 types of these guys, one wears a hat and one doesn't. Now that alone sounds like a pointless note to make, but the ones with the hat appear to have the same elements as the ones that do with the helmets. So for example, you shoot them in the head with a sniper and watch their baseball cap fly right off. If this is an intentional thing, Overkill, I have one slight disappointment for you. This isn't Saving Private Ryan. I did notice that some people mentioned in my previous video that they like the harsh difficulties for when it comes to enemy survivors, which I can agree with, but I can't agree with unfair mechanics. So yeah, it's basically Safe House Raid. It's harder and definitely better than fighting walkers, but it can become a bit unbalanced. The other mission, however, is more like the traditional missions that bring me back into the game. Listening in is just like Hell or High Water. You have to progress through the streets and break into the family's hideout. This time you have to steal a radio so you can listen in to what they're up to in future missions. And just like Hell or High Water, I really like this mission. It's really well structured, there's various routes to get to the base with a decent amount of replay value, and the objectives aren't tedious. Well, some of them aren't. There's 2 parts in this level that scream the whole Payday vibe. There's a section where you have to hold out waiting for an elevator, and depending on how many players are in the game currently, the fuses will break a certain amount of times on the generators, which honestly just screams the No Mercy mission. It's not a massive pain, but having to find multiple fuses in a 4-man game can get a bit tiresome. Secondly, at the end of the map, you've got to transport 3 parts of the radio back to the truck, which on multiplayer is fine. If you're doing solo or duos, you end up having to make a second trip back to the car. And believe me, this can take forever depending on how big the horde is at that point in time. Speaking of hordes though, there is a major issue with this map, and that's the spawn points for the walkers. It's not very discreet. Instead, it's just a random room in several different places. Some of these will be blocked off by a door that gets broken depending on how much the hordometer's level is, but some of them you can just see anyway, and it's a blank room. No, seriously, you look at these and it is just a white room that blocks you off of a red tint wall. The best part of this is that you can see the walkers pop out of thin air. It's like one moment there's nothing, and then a couple of seconds later, they just randomly appear. Now imagine seeing that on a game like Call of Duty Zombies and tell me that's normal. These rooms should be rooms within rooms, so having a separate room for them to spawn in which they can then walk into the main room and then come into the map. You should never in a game see enemies just pop out of thin air. It kind of just ruins any sense of immersion in the game, and it just looks ridiculous. In Hell or High Water this isn't as big of an issue, but there's various other areas in that map as well which suffer the same red tint wall. But walkers appear out of the way so you won't notice them on the spawn in, giving the element of surprise when a walker randomly appears behind you and grabs you. It's that little bit of extra shock that goes a massive mile. If these issues are the standards with the level design for Overkill across this game, what we're basically going to be seeing is some really good layouts with a various amount of flawed spots scattered all over the place. While they don't really break the replay value, they break the charm at certain points of the level, but another thing that could break the replay value is the expeditions. Expeditions are given to you at random. You'll be told that there's a side objective you can do in a specific location, and you only have so many turns to actually go out and accomplish the task. When I say turns though, I mean you could do roughly 3 or 4 other missions before this expedition expires. In the beta though, you don't have to worry because you seem to get these missions every other mission, and sometimes you'll be given 2 at once. Currently from the last 2 betas we've seen 2 different type of locations, one being the Anderson camp and the other being in the same place as Listening In. The camp ones are just harder variations of the holdout missions with more waves and walkers and family encounters. I've heard as well if you actually ignore these it will affect your camp, possibly killing or hurting survivors, but I haven't got any footage of this so I'll leave that to speculation. These missions are fine, but they're a bit repetitive over time. And the other expeditions however are fun at first, but then you realise how crap and lazily these were made. It only takes a couple of runs to get sick of these things. So the missions are marked as Samson Bros and have 3 different variations: rescue, supply run and assassination, with the objectives being pretty obvious: grab some supplies, kill someone or rescue someone. These missions will see you revisiting areas that you've actually progressed through during the Listening In campaign, but instead of it being the entire map, it's just a closed off part of it. However, all 3 missions have the exact same map parts, so you start off at the underpass, open the door, climb the ladder, jump the fence, infiltrate the camp, complete the objective, hold out and then leave. Yeah, that's the entire mission. They're meant to be shorter than the main missions, which is fine, but the lack of variety in these made me hate these after a few runs, because whenever I'm playing with friends, once you get out of the missions, one of the people in my chat would just say, "Hey, I've got a supply run," so we change host to them, which means having to start a new lobby because you can't promote someone to leader. So we then do that expedition and carry on, but wait, someone has a rescue. Okay, so we go and do that one as well. And then sometimes you'll beat an expedition and get another expedition. I don't know if that's how it's meant to work, but that's how it works currently. Now, I'll give the game the benefit of the doubt here and say that these are just overly frequent because it's a beta and they want you to test it. If I'm wrong, however, and it's meant to be this frequent in the main game, then I'm going to get annoyed with this game very quickly, as doing these over and over rips you out of the progression of the main game, and whenever someone says about them now, I just kind of sigh really loudly and want to turn the game off. It's not in the sense of they're bad, it is just playing these constantly gets really boring really quickly. What I will suggest though is maybe to balance this out of how frequent these are with how frequent survival missions and bounties are. Bounties are more your daily challenges that you can do to get some blueprints and meds for the camp. However, you can only get so many a day, which I think is roughly 5, and you need to beat 5 of these challenges to claim the bounty. I think 5 is a little bit too low for how much the bounty requires to be redeemed, and 5 every 24 hours just seems like really little. Survivor missions are fairly similar, you'll only get several a day and you have to wait a whole 24 hours before you can set them to go out on new ones, and it's kind of irritating. I'd say either reduce this to every 12 hours or every 6 at a stretch. I understand that these are a more loot game focused mechanic, but with how infrequent they are, I doubt it being that effective in the long run. Now I might be on my own with that one, but when you play at weird times like I do, it can get a bit boring waiting around for more. If I was to compare my views now to the previous video, while I'm still rather enjoying this game, and again I could see myself playing it more in the future, the final beta has put me on the edge of how I feel the final product is going to come out. A few of the issues that were raised previously were addressed in these updates, but there's still some which are missing, like you still can't rebind keys, FOV is still really low. Again, they've claimed that this is going to be fixed in the main launch, but I can't say for sure. The matchmaking system is currently a pile of crap, and a majority of the time since this latest update has actually buggered my connection when playing with other people. It will just end up freezing every few minutes, and it's not the game itself, it's just the connection halting. And finally, this whole meta loop stuff is really disappointing. I was hoping for more than one areas in a map being converted into a miniature mission, as there's several places in both missions that could be used and easily converted. But the release is roughly 2 weeks away, and going from Overkill's track record of taking 2 years to fix certain issues, looking at you Hotline Miami Day 2, I really don't think the majority of these issues are going to be fixed by launch. But hey, if they're not fixed, I'll just shit on it in the review.